Hello, this is Garrett Keane, continuing the series of videos on programming in Visual Basic for applications in Microsoft Excel. In the previous video, Array 3, we used three separate one-dimensional arrays for the first names and the last names of 5 individuals. The one-dimensional array can be treated like a list of related items, where each element of the array or list is identified by a subscript which denotes the row of the last of the list on which the element is located. So in our example here, for example, the value stored in the element first name 3, so if we number them 1, 2, 3, is the string Kieran, while the value in last name 4 is the string O'Connor. So we number them 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see that last name 4 contains the name O'Connor. If we look at that code here, that was the code here. Basically, it was a program to ask the user to enter the marks for these 5 students, where the names of the students were assigned using these assignment statements. So forename 1 was John, surname 1 stored the value Lynch. If I run this code, it says enter the mark for John Lynch, 23, for Kevin Murphy, that's the second row, and the third row, Kieran Smith, fourth row, Jane O'Connor, fifth row, Sarah Pilkington. So I'm just putting in random answers here. And it works out the class average is 55.8. So it uses this loop to process all 5 records, where the name of each person is known as a record, and it will basically ask the question, enter the mark for John Lynch. We enter a mark at the keyboard, and that gets stored into mark 1. Then it gets added onto a class total. When all 5 values are added up, they're divided by 5, and that gives us the class average. So if we then go back here and have a look at this, what we're going to do here is we say the same data can be stored in a 2-dimensional array called name. That means the first names and the last names. Instead of using 2 separate 1-dimensional arrays, we're going to use a single 2-dimensional array. In this example, a 2-dimensional array can be likened to a table with 5 rows and 2 columns. The first column down here is going to be used to store the first names, while the second column will store the corresponding last names. Each individual element of the array or table requires 2 subscripts to define its location within the array or table. Typically, the first subscript denotes the row, while the second denotes the column of the table where the element is situated. So for example, this is names 5-1, so it's the 5th row in the first column. It has the value Sarah, and that's the value in the 5th row in the first column. Correspondingly over here we have names 3-2, that is in the 3rd row in the 2nd column, so it's the surname or last name of the 3rd person, which is Smith. Okay, so what we're going to do is go back to the code, and we're going to take this code here and we're going to rewrite it so that we're using 2-dimensional arrays. Now the way you declare a 2-dimensional array is like so. As we said, we have the first of all, we're going to change it to name, like so. Did I say, yeah, name? I said names here, so I'll change it to names, like so. And if I come back to the code, of 11, I'm going to call it names. Now we have to define how many rows we're going to have, so it's 1 to 5. I'm going to have 2 columns, so I say 1 to 2. I'll get rid of the surname, but we still have a separate array for the marks. So we now have names 1 to 5, 1 to 2, so that means it's going to have 5 rows and it's going to have 2 columns. The remainder stays the same, class total, class average are the same, prompt is the same. I had to introduce an extra variable here called I for the integer. So what I'm then going to have to do is basically come in here, and I change this to names. It's the first row, and because it's the first name, it's the first column. So it's going to take a little bit of work here, but that's names, that's the second row. It's still the first column because it's the first name. This is names 3-1, names row 4, column 1, and this is names, fifth row, column 1. That's fine. Then I come over here, the surnames I'm going to get rid of, so I'll call this names, and this is the first row, but now it's the second column, because the surnames go in the second column. Names, second row, second column. Names, third row, second column. Names, fourth row, second column. Names, fifth row, second column. So now we've stored the same information where the first names go in the first column, the second subscript denotes the column, and the surnames or last names go in the second column. So you can see that we have a 2 here in for the second subscript. So this time we go through for I is equal to 1 to 5, and this time I just say that's I comma 1, and this is, and sorry, I get put names in here as well instead of forenames, and I put names in here as well, but in this case it's the second column. So if you remember, this is the first name, that's the second name. The first name is in the first column, the second names are in the second column. The rest of it stays the same. So if I just run it like so, enter the mark for John Lynch, it works the same way. I'll just enter random marks here, 58, 87 and 56. So it's worked the same way as the last one, functions the same way. It's just in this example we've used a single two-dimensional array to store this information. There's no great advantage to doing it in this case. In fact, intuitively it probably makes more sense to have separate arrays, first name and last name. I've just really done it for illustration purposes, to show how you actually implement it and how you declare the array. Okay, thank you for listening.